Greenspring. Today I have a guest on the show, Sheila Willing, who's a member of the management staff. I haven't done management before. Who's Who is a program that I host every month where I interview residents usually about their life, and we've always had some very interesting stories and interesting lives of the residents. And no, there's no change today. We're going to talk about a very interesting life with Sheila. You may know Sheila. I mean, you've probably seen her around the halls, and she's also the one who probably took you to your apartment when you were selecting apartments to come here. She certainly did me. My daughter and I came, and we rode around in her little car, C2 apartments. She knew all the details about the apartment. And I'll bet you she knew all the details about the apartment she showed you, too. She's been doing this for a number of years. Well, of course, there's more to the life of Sheila Willing than Greenspring. She had a life before. And so we're going to learn a little bit about that today. Sheila, would you describe just what you do for us at Greenspring, more than I described for you?
Sure, you said it all. Exactly. Well, I am the my title is sales counselor. I think it used to be retirement counselor. I will actually celebrate my 19-year anniversary here in November.
Is that right?
So next year's the big 20.
That means you came in 98.
1998. Yeah, I started here about 2 weeks before Town Center opened. So I've seen every resident move into this wonderful community and seen it grow.
If we get a chance at the end, maybe we can talk about the early days, but I doubt that we're going to have much time to do that.
Right.
What about your current family?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm currently married. I have a wonderful husband. His name is Preston Willing, or everybody calls him Ted.
Ted?
He is the third, so that's why they call him Ted, call his dad we call him Teddy, calls Dad Ted, and his grandfather Preston. So, yeah, we've been married. Actually, we got married in the chapel here.
Oh, is that right?
In almost 10 years ago.
Oh, great.
So, like a full circle. I have a 19-year-old son who's in college at Texas A&M right now, and then my mother, Laura, lives with me. My stepfather passed away, and my real father lives in Arizona. So. And I have a brother in Michigan. He's a firefighter and an EMT and a nurse. And
so your son is in Texas A&M? My
son's a cadet with the Corps of Cadets at Texas A&M.
That's the Navy, right?
He's a Navy cadet right now.
Oh.
He sure
Do they
is.
have other branches, or is it just Navy?
They do. There's about 2,600 cadets at Texas A&M.
Oh, is that right?
I don't know if you know, Texas A&M used to be all military school.
Yes.
I think in the 70s, it became where you didn't have to be a cadet. There's 60,000 students at Texas A&M and 2,600 cadets. So
that's sort of like Virginia Tech.
Exactly. Yeah. They kind of stick out there.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back a few years and tell us about your early life, your parents and what they did and
Sure.
where you lived and so forth.
I went everywhere. My mother is originally from Phoenix, and she's one of 13, so she comes from a very big family. My father and her married during the. My father was a Vietnam vet, my real father, and they divorced when I was 3. So my mom met my stepfather, who was a Marine too, and we
So
were.
your father was a Marine?
And my stepfather was a Marine. Yeah, both were Marines.
She couldn't get out of that.
She definitely couldn't get out of the Marine mode. My stepfather was from Michigan, so when he got out of the Marines, I guess during that era when you got out of the military, you were kind of offered a job. You had a job kind of held for you. So my dad was from Pontiac, Michigan, and we moved to Michigan from California when I was about 6. Yeah. And he worked at GM, General Motors, for about 35 years, so he was there a long time. But everybody in Pontiac works at General Motors, Ford, you know, all the big car places.
And they worked for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
For the same.
Their kids worked. Anyway. Yeah, everybody.
That was the way things happened.
That's right. Back in the 80s, when I got out of high school, a lot of my friends would graduate and walk in making $48 an hour at GM. So it was a nice gig for them.
Well, talking about high school, do you have any good stories about your grade school or your high school?
You know, it's funny. Everybody always remembers a lot of stories about when they're in high school. I felt like life for me didn't start till after I graduated.
Was that
because
right?
I was kind of awkward. I wasn't real popular. I wasn't an athlete.
Oh, you didn't play any sports?
I swam a little and I played tennis. My mom was a wonderful tennis player. My mom was a glorious athlete, but I just didn't inherit that gene. But I did play music. I played the flute and I played the piccolo in the band. So I was really into the band.
So you were involved in the team that way.
Yeah, the band.
I kind of thought you probably were in sports since you wanted to go into the military after you.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about after high school. What were your thoughts about life after high school?
I always wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a kid, but when I found out that you had to deal with blood and things like that, that wasn't happening for me. So I did go to college for a year, but I was at that point. My father always stressed serving your country in the military, and after I got out of high school and started college, I was kind of bored. Like college was not really challenging me. So this was 1981, 82. So I decided to follow that path that my stepfather and my father had went and consider the military.
Yeah, before we get too far away from high school, I often like to think about the people that influenced me throughout the whole life, and I can look back on not only high school but grade school. Do you have any people who you consider were great influences on your life as you look back?
You know, when I look back, and I'll be honest with you, like I said, I feel like my life then did not start, I think because some, just trauma of moving from California, being in a family that I had a stepfather, and my stepfather was very strict, and he really, he was a Marine through and through, and he really basically kind of controlled my life when I was younger. So I think that just kept me at home. Yeah. I really didn't do a lot of things outside the home in high school. I feel like life started for me after I went in the military. But I did have a really good music teacher, Mr. Wise, who was amazing, and really, I think he probably shaped some of the thoughts I had.
Do you continue to do any music? Do you continue to play?
You know, I bought a piano. Okay. I always wanted to play the piano, and my parents weren't that wealthy. Working at General Motors didn't afford a lot of wealth, so we never had a piano. So my mom said, you can't learn to play piano if you don't have a piano. But I just recently bought a piano, and I would like to start taking some lessons. Good. So that's going to be my next endeavor.
All right. Oh, so you went to college for a year, and then you decided you wanted to enlist because
I did.
You wanted to serve your country, so I presume you were going to go to the Marine Corps.
I was like, I'm going to be a Marine like my father and my stepfather, and went over and talked to the recruiter, and he said, you can be a secretary or you can be a secretary. So I said, well, I don't know if that's what I want to do. So I went over next door to the Army guy, and he said, you can do anything you want. You know how the recruiters, you can work at the Pentagon. You can. I never saw the inside of the Pentagon until I toured a few years ago. Yes. So I decided to join the Army on the delayed entry program then, which I don't think they have anymore. But
well, yeah, delayed entry. What does that mean?
It's where you join, but you don't physically go to basic training for probably 6 to 8 months.
Why did you choose to do that? You didn't want to leave that time?
I was still finishing a little bit of my schooling then, and it was just the way things worked. I don't think you could have backed out during that time frame, but it was just the way it worked out for me that it worked. But I was 6 months, yeah.
All right, so you had your basic training down in Georgia, was it?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I did basic training.
And was that in the summertime?
That was, yes. I mean, I think all the time in South Carolina is summer, so it was hot. It was hot.
Then you went on to Georgia.
I went on to Georgia for my advanced training.
And what was your branch?
I was Army Signal Corps.
Signal Corps. Okay.
My first tour, I was Signal Corps.
All right. So your first assignment then was Frankfurt.
I got my orders. I'd never been away from my parents for probably more than 24 hours.
So this was
exciting. I got orders to Germany, way far away from my parents. I went for 3 years and never came home once. So that was my big adventure.
Well, I understand that was the big adventure. I mean, I went through that process too as a youngster.
It was different.
It's a big deal.
It is.
For a while, anyway.
For a while, yeah. You kind of go a little crazy because you're in Germany where there's good beer and lots. And back in the 80s, there was a lot of military in Germany. So my first tour was Frankfurt.
But I never was assigned to Germany.
Oh, you weren't?
No. I was assigned to Turkey, and I was assigned to Greece and Korea and Vietnam and Japan, but never Germany.
Never. Wow, I would have taken those. That sounds good.
Well, that's the way life is sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. You
never-
kind of go where they tell you to go, right?
So what did you do in Frankfurt?
So my first tour of duty in Frankfurt, I was a 31 Charlie, or 31 Chuck as we used to call ourselves, and that's rat rig operator, which it probably
Would
doesn't
you tell
exist.
us what a rat is?
It's a radio operator teletype,
Right.
was what rat meant, but we were in the back of a big truck and we would read the little tapes that came through, and I had a top secret clearance then too, so we
Okay.
could communicate with corporate headquarters. So it was kind of boring, actually. So I think that's why I was looking to do something different, because it wasn't what I thought and what the recruiter said I'd be doing.
And something different was when you saw a guy in a maroon beret.
Saw this guy walk in our unit.
Let's see that maroon
It was my
beret.
maroon beret. I saw
How
a
about
guy
putting it
walk in.
on for us?
Oh my gosh, I haven't put this thing on in how many years? I don't know if I
There
can.
we go.
And you have to kind of, because you don't want to look like the pizza man, like
There
we
you
used to
go.
say
Okay,
in
looks
the Army.
good.
So a guy walked in with the maroon beret, and I said, "Where did you get that?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, you just got to go to jump school." And I said, "Oh,
Now,
that's
what's
all."
jump school.
That's all? You got to go to jump school? And he was like, yeah, I went to jump school, and I got this beret. And I said, wow, I kind of like to do that. And I was coming up on my first enlistment, 3 years.
Okay.
I was coming up on my 3-year mark. And so I talked to the enlistment guy, and I said, hey, if I can go to Airborne school, I'll re-enlist. And he said, sure.
Yes.
He was
What
very,
else do you want?
It was all fine with it. What else do you want? So I re-enlisted and went to Fort Benning, Georgia, wonderful airborne school in the heat of Georgia summer.
I'm kind of interested in a young lady in the military who's in the early 20s in Germany, and now you decide to become a paratrooper. Could you tell us just a little bit about life as a young lady in the military and in the jump school?
Yeah. It was definitely a challenge.
And it takes a different kind of a person, I think.
For me, I never experienced some of the things that a lot of females say they experience, and maybe it's because I think your tolerance level can be different. I always felt like I wanted to do something different. So I think when I went to jump school, there was only 6 women in the entire jump class out of probably about 300 people that started.
Okay.
And 2 people got hurt, so we ended with 4 women in our jump class. So that can be a challenge because you kind of stick out, and
Yeah,
you
I
have
think so.
different
Yeah.
you have different expectations of women. Of course, I don't know if that's changed. It's been a long time since I've been in the military.
Well, I would think it has changed considerably, really,
Yeah.
because there's so many more women in the military and the different MOSs that you weren't able to have, and so I think
Exactly.
there's probably different. And that's why I asked you that question, because I think at that time it was probably I had the impression that it would probably be difficult for you.
It was difficult, but
You always had to be on your toes.
you did. You always had to do better. You had
Yeah.
to run faster, be stronger.
Yeah.
And not that you're going to, but I think for me, if you can bond with a person, that I think you can look beyond their
Yeah.
nationality, their race, their color, all those kind of things. So for me, it was.
Do you remember your first jump?
I do. I vividly remember. Actually, I remember my second jump more than my first jump.
Oh, is that right?
Because your first jump, really, you don't know what to expect.
No.
You can watch videos, you can do all the training, but you really don't know. Once you exit that airplane, you don't know what to expect. But the second time, you know what to expect. So I think the second time was actually scarier than the first time for me.
Okay.
So
it was exciting.
it was exciting. It was because and the whole thing that makes it exciting is being with your comrades, being with your buddies, because everybody's in the same position, everybody's in the same boat. So you're feeling their feelings, they're feeling your feelings, and I think that's what I really enjoyed, just that camaraderie.
Now, I assume that during your jump training, once you got on the ground, it was not all that important, but once you got into the Airborne, the 82nd, what you did on the ground was very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, they touch a little bit on it in jump school and airborne school, but I mean, the whole reason for jumping is to get where you can't really get a lot of troops in, massive air
absolutely.
power, and get behind enemy lines and be able to function from there. So
That's right.
you learn a little bit more of that. I was in an aviation unit in the 82nd, so we did more of kind of supplies and, but we did have Cobras, Blackhawks, Apaches.
Now, I'm also interested in the fact that you went to the 82nd, but the idea, you were assigned to Fort Ord.
I got a
and then you said, I really don't want to go to Fort Ord. I want to be in the 82nd Airborne, and you go down and sign into the 82nd Airborne.
That's back in the day. You could do that. You might not be able to do that anymore.
You really could do that.
But you could just, as long as you weren't AWOL, and you were signed into a unit, you were okay. And then you got to find a job.
Yeah.
You know, they got to be able to take you. Back in the 80s, the 82nd didn't have a lot of women, and all the units didn't take women, because all the infantry units, the artillery, they wouldn't take women down it. So one of my friends said, hey, the 82nd Aviation at the brigade level will accept women. And I was, at that point, I had transitioned from Signal Corps to intelligence.
Okay.
And most intelligent folks don't go airborne. So I was able to find a position in the S2 intelligence brigade there at the 82nd.
Well, I just thought that was fascinating. Hard. It was kind of hard to believe.
I wouldn't recommend it anymore, but I really wanted to. I figured if I'm going to go to jump school, used to call them 5 jump chumps. People that go to sorry if anybody's only done 5 jumps. If you only do 5 jumps and you are not in airborne status, you're called a 5 jump chump. So I did not want to be that. So
well,
that's
how many jumps did you make in the 82nd?
So in the 82nd, I probably did about 35 jumps.
So.
And you do 5 in jump school.
Yeah.
So you do 5 in jump school, and then
So you're you really are a paratrooper.
you have to jump every 90 days minimum to maintain your jump status, because you get paid for jump status. So
that's right.
And you have to maintain your jump status.
All right. Well, we've got to move on, because now you made several deployments in the 82nd.
I did. I was actually married for a short time while I was in the 82nd, and I was deployed more than my husband, and he was in a tank unit. So the 82nd Aviation really does support all of the battalions in the division, so we were always constantly deploying.
Now, you were in Desert Storm?
I was in Desert Storm, Desert Shield first.
What did you do in those?
So as an intelligence analyst, we did a lot of the requests.
So you were over in Saudi Arabia or Iraq?
We were in Saudi Arabia. I got to Saudi Arabia, Dhahran Air Base, in the 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was about 150 degrees.
150
150. When did Saddam invade Kuwait? That was in August. We were there by September 5th.
Oh, is that right?
So the 82nd Airborne Division had rapid deployment. We were able to deploy pretty quickly. So we were there at Dhahran Air Base. We stayed in an airplane hangar, the whole division, the whole brigade.
That was hot.
It was hot. There was only 5 women, so that was a challenge.
Yeah, well, it was a challenge just being in Saudi Arabia.
Exactly, to have to cover and things like that. But when you were on your base, you didn't have to cover. But if we ever went out, we would have to, and we couldn't drive. So that could be a challenge too.
Okay, so you had some other deployments, Panama?
I did not go to Panama. I was there. They did not take women to Panama with them. That was a big point of contention with some of the linguists that were women then. But I did know. I actually knew about Panama about 48 hours before it happened. So it was kind of neat to know what was going on, because I had clearance, and then to see it break on the news was surreal for me. But I did do National Training Center in the desert out in California. 29 Palms, which I'm not sure if it's there anymore in California.
Oh, well, I've been to 29 Palms a few times too.
So is it still there? I'm not sure.
It was, I don't know. It was, let's see, when did I go? I was there probably in the late 80s, I think.
Oh, I was probably there then.
Was that right?
Yeah, we used to do deployments.
Well, we were running
there.
a national training exercise. I was in the chemical, well, I wasn't in the chemical. I was a civilian, but I was doing an analysis for chemical warfare.
I was probably
And we
out
had the
there.
Marines loading the spray tanks. And this was 100 degrees or so.
Oh, yeah, it's hot.
We wanted to make sure that troops could really load chemical agents into tanks the way they're supposed to in that kind of weather, and they did. It was remarkable.
That's amazing. That training was, I think, National Training Center and 29 Palms was actually more training than I got in the total being out in the desert, being in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. It's just more intense.
Yeah, I also got down to Fort, in Georgia. on the chemical
Fort
warfare
Gordon?
exercise. Not Fort Gordon, where the division is near
Benning?
Savannah.
Oh, Savannah. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Is that? I think that's Fort Benning.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. It's east of that.
There's-
It's near Savannah.
Okay.
Anyway, it was kind of warm then.
Yes.
I got on those kind of exercises too.
Georgia is warm.
So it's kind of fun.
Georgia is definitely warm.
Well, now
It's mosquitoes.
you decided to get out of the.
Well, I hurt my back on a jump one time, actually from a helicopter, which was crazy. We used to jump helicopters sometimes too,
Well, I would
and
think
not
that
the
would be
fixed
easier.
wing.
You wouldn't have the slipstream, or you'd have the downdraft though.
Yeah, it was really odd. I think we jumped a different parachute than I was used to, and I wasn't sure how to maneuver it. So I actually did hurt my back. I did not jump for almost a year and a half when I was in the 82nd, just because I was injured pretty badly. I hurt my knee before I went to jump school, so that kind of started hurting, and I just couldn't jump anymore. And I tried to go to a different unit, and it just didn't work. So I said, you know what? And I met my husband then, my second husband, sorry. And so I said, you know, I'm just getting out.
Yeah.
So I got out, and I got my real estate license after I got out.
Did your second husband, was he in the Army also?
Yes, he did 25 years in the military. So that's why we went back to Germany. So I went back to Germany as a civilian.
Oh, okay.
After that, and worked for a nice gentleman that started a company there. So I worked in Germany for 3 more years.
Okay.
Still don't know the language, but
Well,
still don't know the language.
all right. Well, now let's talk a little bit about coming to Greenspring. How did you were back about a year or so, I guess, before you actually.
Almost a year. I was
Yeah.
back in the States. We came back in 1996. And my babysitter actually was right across the street because my son was born in Germany. And right across the street here, my son was at a sitter, and I worked in Northwest DC. I had gotten a job with a property management company.
So you say you lived across the road?
My babysitter was across the road. I lived over off Franconia Road when we came back here.
Oh, okay.
So I saw the banner. If you remember the big trailer that we had on the main road, do you remember that?
I
in the
should
beginning?
remember it because I lived I lived just at the top of the hill and to the right half a mile, and so I watched this place grow up. I watched I moved there in '78, so I've watched.
Oh, so yeah, we had a huge trailer, a
Yeah.
nice trailer on the main road that we sold out of until the town center opened.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started working. Will Nance actually hired
Yeah.
me in July of well, it was probably at the end of October. I started in November of 1998.
Yeah. And you started doing what?
I just started as a sales associate in the office.
So you've been in the sales department the whole time?
I've been in the sales the whole time. Yeah, worked with Dana Bradshaw.
Did you start showing people their apartments then?
Nope, that was Susan DiDomenico. I know a lot of folks probably remember Susan.
Yeah.
And then Dana Bradshaw
Yeah.
was the sales counselor. And then when Ashby Ponds opened up, I was promoted to sales
okay.
counselor. But I've done pretty much everything in the office that could be
When
done.
did Ashby Ponds open?
I thought it was like 2006 or 7 that they opened. So Dana Bradshaw went out there. So ever since then, I've been the sales counselor.
So, okay. And do you do anything else? Well, let's talk about just a little bit more about the days then. We had the trailer out on. And that was the Parkway built?
Yes, the Parkway was
It
there.
had just been built. then.
I think it just opened before that.
Yeah, before you brought the trailer in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't remember. I guess because I was probably working more at Tyson's Corner than I was downtown.
Oh, you're still working then? Okay.
Oh yeah, I worked until 2007.
Wow. I got a few years to go then.
I had no desire to retire, to tell you the truth, because I enjoyed working. I did a lot of
true.
interesting things. So why quit? And I'm
That's
doing a lot
right.
of interesting things now.
That's right.
So I'm not quitting.
Good.
All right. So tell us a little bit about the environment at that time.
So it was,
Town center's there, and
Town
that's
Center
about
was
it.
there, and we had a couple people living here, and it was very chaotic because we still had construction going on, as you know, and you could hear the booming when they would be blasting. So it was very interesting for the first 4 years. I remember when Garden Ridge opened, and then I remember September 11th. I was sitting right in that office during September 11th. And I don't know if you remember, one of our coworkers lost her husband in the Pentagon
I didn't know
on
that.
September 11th.
Yeah.
So a lot of things have happened here at this community for me. But I feel like I've grown up here. I mean, I feel like there's my time in the military, and then there's my time here at Greenspring.
Well, I mean, almost half your life has been here.
I know. Almost 20 years. Next year's the big 20.
That's right. Well, Sheila, I've certainly enjoyed having you on the program.
Oh, thank you so
today.
much for asking me.
And I enjoyed reading about your life and the idea of a young lady being in the paratroopers and so forth. That was great, and I appreciate all the service you gave to us, because
you too.
Well, I was in for a while, but you gave us a great service in the paratroopers, in the Airborne, and over in Saudi Arabia and all those places.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gray, for having me today. I appreciate it.
And when you see Sheila down the halls,
Come
say
see
hi,
me.
Sheila.
Send me referrals.
That's right. Send somebody to her to get an apartment. Well, folks, that's about all for the Who's Who today. Let's talk about